During the 1930s, the United States experienced a series of ransom kidnappings committed explicitly for financial gain, with victims generally from either middle-class or wealthy families. The most widely publicized ransom kidnapping at the time was the 1932 kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh Jr., the only son of the record-setting aviator Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh's son died during the abduction, but a ransom was sought nevertheless. The Lindbergh case inspired Congress to pass legislation that allowed the Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate kidnappings in any state under certain conditions, one of which was a ransom demand. Despite this legislation, ransom kidnappings continued to be a major concern at the time when James Bailey Cash Jr. was abducted in May 1938. On the night of May 28, 1938, a tragic event unfolded as Franklin Pierce McCall, a local laborer and former tenant of the Cash family, abducted 5-year-old James Bailey Cash Jr., affectionately known as Skee-G. Following his mother Vera Cash's departure to meet her husband at their family-owned general store after putting James Jr. to bed, McCall surreptitiously entered the house. He used a handkerchief to silence the young boy and forcibly took him from his home, tragically smothering him in the process. McCall concealed the lifeless body of the child approximately half a mile away from his own residence. Around 10:10 p.m., both parents returned home and discovered their son's absence, immediately initiating a search in the vicinity. Neighbors and local Boy Scouts subsequently joined the search effort, intensifying their efforts to locate James Jr. Meanwhile, McCall began to harass John Emanuel and Geraldine Barnes, a local African-American farming couple, around 11 p.m. on the same night. Initially, McCall tried to coerce Emanuel into contacting Bailey Cash, James Jr.'s father, and delivering a letter. However, Emanuel adamantly refused, prompting McCall to threaten him with violence before departing. Concerned for their safety, the couple decided to leave their home and seek refuge at a friend's residence. Meanwhile, Beatrice Cash, a relative of John Bailey Cash residing in the same town, discovered a letter attached to her front door knob. The letter instructed the recipient, J.B. Cash, to proceed to a specific house in Princeton's African-American neighborhood for further instructions. Upon finding the letter, Beatrice promptly woke up her husband and drove to the Cash residence to assist in the search. The designated house mentioned in the letter turned out to be Emanuel's residence. As midnight approached, the search efforts began to wind down, with frustration and anger mounting among the search party. Around 1 a.m., Bailey Cash and the rest of the family converged on Emanuel's house, encircling it while Bailey and Asbury commenced their search for the letter. Eventually, they discovered the note tucked underneath the door, marking the first of several ransom letters that the Cash family would receive during this distressing ordeal. The first note was composed of multiple sheets of paper with a series of demands written throughout. The Cash family was to provide $10,000 in various types of bills with serial numbers not in an order, and deliver the money in a shoebox to Homestead, where they would drive along the road until they saw a flash 2 times, at which point they would leave the money on the roadside and continue the route. If Bailey complied, and kept the ransom secret, the note promised that John Bailey Jr. would be safely returned. By 3 a.m., Special Agent Arthur Rutson of the FBI was contacted by Dade County Sheriff R.B. Evanson, leading to a subsequent meeting at the Roberts Hotel in Miami Beach to discuss the case. Another investigator, Samuel McKee, joined the investigation and accompanied Rutson to the Cash residence. Bailey Cash and Rutson analyzed the ransom notes and concluded that the kidnapper likely hailed from the local area based on the language used. During their meeting, Bailey requested the FBI to hold off on taking action until after he had paid the ransom, as permitted by Florida law. Rutson agreed to his request. Rutson's interviews with Bailey and the Cash family's upstairs tenants led him to believe that the motive behind the kidnapping was primarily monetary, rather than a personal vendetta. It appeared that the kidnapper had knowledge of the Cash's financial situation and their daily routine, indicating a personal connection. On Sunday morning at 10:15 a.m., McKee and Rutson contacted FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., requesting additional agents to assist with the investigation. Director J. Edgar Hoover approved the request, and Agent Earl J. Connolly, an experienced agent in kidnapping cases, was dispatched to Miami to oversee the investigation. With the FBI's involvement, a telephone line was established in the Cash home, and they assumed control of the ransom payment process, as the Cash family did not possess sufficient funds to meet the ransom demands. On May 29, it became known to FBI agents that news of the kidnapping had reached the media. The Miami Herald and Miami Daily News agreed to a media blackout until the safe recovery of Cash Jr. and the ransom payment. The following day, FBI agents went to the First National Bank and Trust Company of Miami to secure the required funds and follow the necessary protocols for a ransom payment. The serial numbers on the bills were sent to banks and post offices across the United States and Canada. According to McCall, around 12:45 a.m., he discovered a third ransom letter at a local Amaco gas station owned by Wilson P. Cash, another member of the Cash family. In reality, McCall had planted the note earlier while talking with an employee. He retrieved the note later, pretending to notice it for the first time. McCall followed the instructions in the note and made calls. He encountered Bailey Cash at 1 a.m. on his way home from the failed ransom drop-off. The new note instructed Bailey Cash to make another ransom payment at 4 a.m. on May 31st along the same route. Cash left the money, $10,000 in a shoebox, by a telephone pole at 4:10 a.m. McCall, who had been hiding at an orange grove, collected the money and hid it in various locations around Princeton before visiting friends. The search for Cash Jr. continued on May 31st, with McCall joining in. Media coverage increased, leading to numerous citizen-reported sightings and rumors of possible suspects. Substantial assistance arrived on June 1st from organizations such as the American Legion, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Red Cross. Alongside FBI members and sheriffs, these groups searched an extensive area but were unable to find Cash Jr. On June 3rd. The large search party was withdrawn, and a smaller group of 150 members with tracking skills continued the search with law enforcement. Later that day, the search was called off. Despite the official conclusion of the search, suspicion surrounding McCall intensified, primarily due to his final ransom note and the circumstances of its discovery. Consequently, authorities decided to question McCall on June 5th. As part of the investigation, McCall and other suspects underwent lie detector tests, which spanned 3 days. By June 7th, McCall had confessed to the abduction and murder of Cash Jr. McCall's motive for the heinous act was driven by his need for money, both to support his wife's extravagant spending habits and for his personal gain. Following the interrogations, McCall guided the investigators to the locations where he had hidden the ransom money and, subsequently, the victim's body. In a report to Director Hoover, Agent Connolly revealed that during the search on June 3rd, the searchers had come remarkably close to the spot where the body was eventually found, just 1/10 of a mile to the west. Following the discovery of Cash Jr.'s body, Director Hoover lifted the media restrictions, allowing them to cover McCall's involvement in the murder and his subsequent confession. McCall was initially transferred to the Biscayne building but had to be quickly relocated due to a large mob of around 300 people who gathered outside, protesting the heinous crime. For his safety, McCall was moved to Dade County Jail. Since McCall pleaded guilty, there was no trial. On June 15th, a preliminary hearing took place, followed by a presentation of evidence the next day. McCall received a death sentence as a result. The execution occurred on February 24, 1939, through the use of the electric chair at the Florida State Prison. Notably, McCall became the first individual to be executed under the Florida Lindbergh Law.